So we do have a quorum, and Mr. Clerk, if you will, call the roll, please. Or Madam Clerk, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Senator Storm, Senator Turner, Senator Yates, Representative Branscombe.
Here.
Representative Dietz. Representative Huff.
Here.
Representative McPherson.
Here.
Representative Palumbo. Representative Smith. Here. Representative Tackett Lafferty. Senator Mays Bledsoe. Senator McDaniel. Representative Blanton. Representative Bowling. Here. Representative Bray. Representative Petrie. Co-Chair Upchurch.
Here.
Chair Higdon.
Here. We do have a quorum. We have a motion on the minutes from the last 3 meetings.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. So right into the agenda, the cash management system. So gentlemen, if y'all will, identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. And you can tell this is a very high-level meeting when Ron Rigney shows up. Anyway, if y'all would, please identify yourself for the record, and please proceed.
Jim Gray, Transportation Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My name is Sean McKiernan, Executive Director of the Office of Budget and Fiscal Management.
Ron Rigney, the Director for...
Ron, if you will, turn your microphone on.
Okay, I thought it was on. Ron Rigney, Director for Program Management.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I may, just for a couple of minutes before we get to cash management and the agenda, I wanted to update the committee. First, thank you all for being here, for your public service. I always try to routinely say that. But there's something important going on with the cabinet today that I know some of you all are familiar with, but that is our mission that we are on today to North Carolina to support the flood victims in North Carolina. And I just wanted to share with you all what that looks like today. By the end of this week, we will have 115 employees of the Department of Highways, boots on the ground. They are there in North Carolina, outside of Asheville, outside of Boone. In fact, I'm going to be down there on Friday myself, along with some of the chief district engineers that have already been there. James Ballinger's going down with me. John Moore's going down as well. And it's so remarkable. Just yesterday, Secretary Hancock was on the call with me. We have a weekly call with the Department of Highways at 10 o'clock on Tuesday mornings. And there was a report which was so gratifying. You all would have loved being on that call. We were getting reports from our chiefs of these folks who are doing this incredible work, supporting these folks who need it. And, you know, we were asked by North Carolina if we would bring our people down. And they knew, Joey Hopkins, who's my counterpart in North Carolina, he knew that our folks had the experience with this kind of terrain, the mountains, the topography, the hollers, and the conditions. And so we now we'll have by the end of this week, as I said, 115 on the ground. Now, think about how many people behind the scenes are supporting those people who are frontline on the ground. They asked us, North Carolina said, if you're coming, we need help that can be self-sufficient. So we have taken our equipment, our rolling stock, we have taken materials, we even took extra tires in case there was flat tires. That's how prepared this mission has been. And it was so gratifying to hear Chris Jones. Some of y'all know Chris. Chris is the chief district engineer in District 11. And Chris was saying yesterday, District 11 Manchester, and Chris was saying yesterday on the call, he said that the appreciation that's been expressed by the citizens that they are helping and supporting has been just amazing. And he told the story of one woman who owns a restaurant called Betty's, and she's famous for Betty's biscuits. And Betty invited 2 crews, not just to her restaurant, but to her home for dinner. And our people didn't really want to, didn't know if they wanted to do that or not, but Mr. Chairman, they did. They went, and not only did they then get to have dinner at Betty's home, but this is outside of Asheville, but also the next day at her restaurant. And, you know, one of the, I think that represents the level of thanks and appreciation and support and thanks and appreciation, and just how grateful these folks are for the work that our people from all over the state now are doing. And I wanted to mention that just as we kicked off today, because we're so grateful, and I hope that our, and you know, I also say, I said I'm about to stop, but what's so gratifying is for everyone that is on that is there today, and they were, by the way, staying in cots until they got hotels yesterday. They were staying on cots overnight in a bunkhouse, along with other first responders. But for everyone who is on the ground, and there will be a rotation soon after 2 weeks, but there are 2 that have volunteered behind them, which again just shows, you all know these people, they're your districts, and just salt of the earth, and we're so grateful that we have this kind of spirit within the cabinet.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for that update, and thank you for that effort. I did contact you. I think it was September 29th, right after we realized the damage and the need for help. And I asked you about that, and you said you were in contact. You were offering your services, and as they needed them, that you would be available. And you've carried through on that. And
well, we were right there, right out of the gate. And I think what everybody in this room can feel grateful about is that there was a recognition that these Kentuckians knew how to really help and really contribute. And that's been what we've recognized and appreciated.
But they'd probably heard the rumors about your nickname, the Master Disaster.
Oh, I don't know about that, Mr. Chair.
And
you were, I know, 2 years ago when we did the tour, we were in Breathitt, and that was real encouragement that day that you were with us.
I saw firsthand and I'll never forget what you told me when I asked this question. But there were so many state trucks in those counties. It was like the military had moved in. There was every vehicle you saw had this Kentucky emblem on the side, and they were hauling gravel and dumping it on county roads. And I asked you, I said, I didn't know we could do that. Put gravel on a county road, and you said, you know, we're doing what we need to do. We'll ask for forgiveness. We didn't ask for permission. We're just getting the job done. So
we weren't asking about boundaries at that time.
There was no boundaries, and so
James Ballinger has a good line. He said 2 weeks ago. He said we need to get on this mission, and the paperwork will always catch up. But we need to move, and we need to move now to help these people. They need it.
Well,
and we have never not missed a payment back when the cabinet expected it.
I think that's what people expect, with the bureaucracy not to get in the way, and you took care of that. So,
all right, I'll turn it over to Sean.
All right, Sean.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have a brief presentation about the cash management system just a reminder about the system. It was established in the 2000-2002 biennium, and as part of the biennial budget, modified that following biennium to require a minimum road fund balance of $100 million. And then the cash management system has been included in subsequent budget bills to this day. It permits KYTC to authorize funding for highway projects by employing a cash flow financing program, which provides projected available cash by month for current fiscal year, plus projected available cash over the next 2 fiscal years. So it really enables us to start projects today that we'll have the funding for down the road to complete. KYTC estimates balances in future periods using a variety of sources. We have a monthly meeting where we go over all of the monthly road fund revenues, the beginning balances of the road fund, the federal funds, federal reimbursements we've received in that month and in the past months. We look at all of the expenditures against the road fund, including those items that aren't even highway plan programs, such as maintenance and revenue sharing and resurfacing and all of those road fund expenses that aren't part of the highway plan. And then, of course, we look at the active project spending and those projects as well. And this is all to inform leadership on the level of expenditure that the road fund is able to support. So always keeping in mind that $100 million fund balance. So it's intended to gauge the system's capacity to initiate projects. As a reminder, the ART committee, the committee that reviews the cash management model, consists of the secretary, the deputy secretary, the state highway engineer, and the deputy state highway engineers, and the KYTC budget director. We have a monthly meeting. It's usually about an hour, and we talk about all of these various inputs into the model. We look at all of the assumptions that go into the model, such as how quickly are we expending these funds, and always trying to be good stewards of the road fund. As it says in the state highway plan, decisions about when to obligate state project dollars and how much state project work can be afforded at any point, these decisions will be made by the Secretary of the Transportation Cabinet based on monthly cash management evaluations received from the authorization review team. So here's a look at the project initiation process. So all planned highway plan projects follow the same basic steps. So project phase is identified for funding in the enacted highway plan, and that's for the current biennium. The project or program manager submits a funding request to the Division of Program Management to authorize funds for use on the identified project phase. The Division of Program Management checks the project schedule in the highway plan and the funding availability, and he asks these questions. The division asks these questions. Are the funds available within the scheduled funding code? Are there any programmatic constraints at this time, such as over-programming of that funding category? And then finally, that 3C, are funds available when evaluated against the cash management constraints? So that's where that ART assessment comes in. And if the answer to all of those questions is yes, then the necessary documentation is prepared for the secretary to approve that initiation. If the answer to any of those questions is no, then the project is held in abeyance until either the funding issue has been resolved, and when that is resolved, then it can move forward, or the project is carried forward in the next highway plan. I believe Ron's going to talk about the funding cycle.
Yes, thank you. The funding request cycle here, this is an exhibit that we developed years ago as a training aid for our project managers to look at how the funding cycle actually works when they submit funding requests. But to first point out, as Sean mentioned, the cabinet is always looking to move as many projects forward as possible, as quickly as possible, and within the biennial element of the enacted highway plan. that's our number one goal, is to try to move things forward as quickly as we can. On the funding request cycle, the project manager or the program manager works with the KYTC user division. When I say user division, think of that as your division of planning, your division of design, your division of right-of-way utilities, construction. It's the areas within the cabinet that we would say are going to be the users of those requested funds. So what they do, they work with the user division, first of all, to ensure that the amount of funding that they're requesting is the current estimated cost, it's updated. And then the user division, once they make that determination, the user division submits the request for the funding to the Division of Program Management, which is where I'm the Director of Division of Program Management. And trust me, Senator Higdon, I have a great staff that works in program management, and they make me look really good every single day. They are a great staff. I'm blessed to have the people I get to work with. They don't work for me, I get to work with them. Then the Division of Program Management, once we get that funding request, we go through and we look at the confirmation of the funds. Is the requested fund, is it in the enacted highway plan? Is that phase? Is it listed in the highway plan? Is it scheduled? Then we look to see if it's in the highway plan, but is it scheduled within the biennium years? It's not in the out years, it's within the biennium. Then the Division of Program Management, we check the completion of all the required activities to ensure that the project is in compliance with state and federal regulations. It's okay if we have an environmental document. Has it been reevaluated? Is it current? Is the project listed in the STIP or in the TIP if it's within an MPO area? We look for right-of-way certifications, utility certifications if we're getting ready to let a project to construction. And we also look to see if the total cost of the project is over $100 million, we have to do a financial plan. We make sure that that's all completed so that we're following the state and federal regulations before we proceed with the funding request. And if those things are in line, then we proceed with working with the ARC committee to see, to determine if the funds are actually available to submit the funding through for the authorization of funds. We're trying to determine, as Sean pointed these things out, are funds available within the funding code identified in the enacted highway plan? Are there any programmatic constraints, the project scope, the eligibility of funding type? Are there any constraints that we need to be thinking about for that request? Are the funds available when evaluated against the cash management constraints? And again, we look at the cash management, and as Sean pointed out, in that cash management, we're not only looking at current expenditures, current available cash, but we're looking at 2 years out for anticipated future expenditures for those projects that are already on the books, how they're spread out, as well as anticipated putting more projects on the books that we'd be expending. So all those have to work together. For a project phase that is ready to move forward, the Division of Program Management, we prepare the funding authorization document and we send it to the State Highway Engineer and the Secretary for their approval signatures. Each funding authorization requires 2 signatures. It requires a signature from the State Highway Engineer's office and the Secretary's office, so it has to have 2 signatures. For a project phase that is not ready to move forward, the Division of Program Management holds the funding request for a corresponding project until the funding issues have been resolved or have been addressed. And if funding is not authorized, and remember this, please remember this, if the funding is not authorized, program management, we hold that funding request for the corresponding project phase so that the project phase is carried forward into the next recommended highway plan. So it's not forgotten. We keep that on tab so that we know we can, if it doesn't get authorized, we can move it forward to the next plan. After the funding authorization has been approved, the program manager and the user of it is notified that funds are available now to begin work activities. And then the project managers, they monitor those project funding to ensure that the project budget and the expenditures are being conducted in accordance with the regulations. And then upon the completion of the project activities, the project manager and the user division and the division of counts, they go in and they look at, okay, we need to close this project out and release any available funds not used so that those funds then become available for other projects. And again, that's the typical funding cycle.
That concludes our presentation on the cash management system. We have we can either take questions now or wait until the end of the presentation.
We can go ahead and talk about this one now. We'll probably have some questions. What is our current balance in our cash balance account? I know we're required to keep 100 million. Do we have
the daily
a
balance
billion?
is just a little over 200 million. But of course, we have to keep in mind that the low point is typically in August, so we have to plan for that. We're already planning for next August's low point.
So what typically what is you talk about our low point? What's typically the high point of the cash balance account?
I'll have to confess, I've watched this pretty closely for about 5 years. And as Mike Hancock will confirm, that we both, there's good news and bad news in a higher number, as you all. So our challenge is to push through as much as we can while still recognizing that $100 million threshold. So it's not great news for that number to go up real high. It has been as high in my memory, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong here, but around 400 million. Maybe a little higher, yeah.
Okay.
Which I was not just a little bit of agitation about. So we're trying to keep that at that, as Sean said, at that where it is now is a I would characterize as a good number. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and that leads me right into the next question: is how many dollars will we get out the door? I don't know if you're looking at a calendar year or fiscal year, however you're looking at that. But we years ago our goal was $1 billion. Of course, hopefully we probably ought to set a new goal since we've got this little thing called inflation that has probably made an effect on that somewhat. And we've been doing $1 billion for several years.
That's right. Right. Yeah, and we're consistent this year at that level is what the expectation will be through the end of the calendar year.
Should it sometime
1.1.
1.1?
Don't hold me to that 1.1. I think
Okay.
we're working toward it.
Okay. Well, that was one suggestion I might make, that we up that goal just a little bit.
That's worth looking at. Yes.
Yeah, because that way we're getting the same. We know we're getting that out the door, because if we consistently do $1 billion, we're probably falling a little bit behind. But this is a good point too. I know we talk every month about mega projects. Any update or any good news to share on the mega projects?
That was at the end of the. You want me to jump into that right now?
Okay, I didn't.
Where's our overall agenda?
That's the last thing.
Okay, all right. Well, let's wait till the last thing then. Let's not jump it. Okay. Any question? Representative Smith has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be real brief.
Okay.
Looking at your diagram you put up of all the that one there,
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Secretary, are in all these projects that get funded and when we go through budget process, are you comfortable with all the safety valves that are in place? It seems like there's a lot of them. Seems like it goes through a lot of, and it's a learning process for me in dealing with it. I never heard of a consultant till I got involved in trying to get a project done. But are you comfortable with all the safety valves that are put into place that are our dollars are going to where they're supposed to be, and are you comfortable with the numbers that come in, because you have safety valves for numbers for the taxpayers, knowing that a project just doesn't get put out. You have estimates, everybody has to meet criteria, am I right?
That's right.
Well,
Yes, sir.
I get a lot of emails and get burnt up over single bids. And it bothers me because a lot of our companies are Kentucky companies. And, you know, a lot of them live in my district that work there. And so I believe that we're protected in every project that goes out. I see this one in here on the cash project, but every project is protected, and everybody's protected to make sure that it comes in, because if it doesn't meet the criteria, it goes back out again. Am I right?
That's right.
And so are you comfortable with the process, the way that we're doing it?
Yes.
And I can stand there and tell people I'm ignoring the loud, the squeaky voices out there, that we're doing it right.
Yes. The bear in mind that the cabinet has for many years had a check system, and that is our estimating process that every project goes through. And the review committee, the contracts committee, will award a contract only after the estimates, the internal estimates, have been executed. And then only when it falls within the boundaries of whether or not it meets the criteria, the estimate criteria. Now, bear in mind that especially in times of like we've been going through with inflation and ensuring that we are getting the work processed, pushing the work through. And when I say pushing it through, I mean encouraging it through the system. We've got projects that are very much needed, that safety, the public safety, is dependent and reliant on. So we're constantly balancing the need for efficiency and in procurement and purchasing with the need for executing these projects that are needed in your communities. So that's what good management is actually all about.
I just didn't want that cloud to be over that's been laying there, and people saying things that's not right. We have a good industries that are working hard, and we get good product. Mostly in my area, I can't speak across the whole state, but we got good workers and good products. And we don't. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, we want robust competition,
Yeah,
and we encourage robust competition.
and I want to see the projects through and make sure that we
Right.
get a good product too, and we're getting it. I just wanted to make sure we was on the same page that, it's not, there shouldn't be a cloud over it. This is we're getting our work done. We're getting the projects out. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative McPherson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I see there where you're required to keep $100 million in there. And I've seen for about the last 3 or 4 years, since 2021, I think we've got an investment income coming in the general fund because we've got enough money ahead that we're able to put money on interest. Do you all put this $100 million that's required to keep in here, does it stay on interest, and does it bear interest in this money that fluctuates?
The road fund is invested through the state's Office of Financial Management, and it does receive interest, and that's part of our monthly meeting is to talk about all of our receipts, and interest is one of those components.
Good. I thought I'd seen the line item, but I appreciate it. Every penny counts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. And we do have some special guests. I want to recognize Rocky before he runs off. Rocky, thank you for dropping in. And also Rachel Byers. Rachel, do you have a special assistant with you today? Sam. Good morning, Sam, and welcome to the Transportation Committee meeting, or Budget Review Subcommittee on Transportation. And I see you're taking notes, and that's very good. We appreciate that. Just put on there, very good committee. Except the chairman. That's. There are several chairmen here. I guess you're talking about this one particular one. So, okay, all of us. Okay. Seeing no further questions, we can move on to our next.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we'll welcome Tracy Hyatt, who is Executive Director of our Human Resources Office.
Welcome.
Good morning.
If you don't mind, identify yourself for the record and please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Hyatt. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Human Resource Management, and I will be presenting on the personnel review. Right now, we have 61% of our employees working a 40-hour work week. We have roughly 4,300 full-time employees that are on a 40-hour work week. We have estimated that the cost of moving the remaining employees from 37.5 to 40 hours to be $14.6 million. And the majority of that increase will be to the road fund of $12.2 million. Highways cost is estimated at $10 million, with $1.2 million being for the Department of Vehicle Regulation. To tell you a little bit about our remote work telecommuting policy, it does adhere to the Personnel Cabinet's enterprise policy. It is a comprehensive policy that makes clear that participation is at the discretion of the cabinet, and it does require a formal agreement between the employee, the manager, and leadership. As part of the agreement, there's a safety checklist that confirms that the remote workplace conditions are safe and that all and any confidential information remains secure. Employees are expected to complete all job duties and responsibilities as if they were at their primary workstation. Employees are required to work from their primary workstation at least 3 days per week, and managers may designate which days those are. We are happy to share that only a handful of employees have had their telecommuting participation revoked due to either disciplinary or evaluations. We do have a few positions that are not set up for telecommuting, and right now we have less than 40% of the cabinet that do telecommute. Our vacancy numbers. Cabinet-wide, we have 559 vacant positions, but our recruitment efforts are in full swing for nearly half of those positions. Either job advertisements are posted, applications and resumes are being reviewed, interviews are being conducted, or even the recommendations are going through the hiring process. For 288 of those vacancies, so there are 288 currently in process. We do utilize temporary staff right now to bridge the gap while we are working through the hiring process to fill the permanent positions. This allows us to continue providing essential services and maintain operational efficiency. Just for an example, the regional driver license offices that we had to get up and running very quickly. In order to do that, we had to utilize temporary staff. But I am happy to say that at this point in time, we have almost all of those positions filled by permanent staff. We are in the process of still hiring some. Right now, we have 116 that Department of Vehicle Regulation is finishing out hiring full-time. One other thing I did want to point out about our vacancies is it does appear a little bit high, but August is always a high retirement month, so that does increase our vacancies a little bit, but the majority of those are working through the process to get those not established, I apologize for that, to get those advertised and filled. And then this slide gives you a little bit of information on our timeline for hiring, the process that we go through. It outlines the time frame that we have allotted for each step in the process, from advertising a vacancy to onboarding an employee. My office doesn't regulate the time frame that a manager fills a position. So the manager knows their units, they know their organizational needs, they know their timeline of what they have going on in their area and how much time they can devote to interviewing and training a new employee, because we want to set that new employee up for success. So we let that hiring manager determine when they are able to fill that vacancy. We have begun a pilot program with 3 of our districts, which will begin a weekly hiring for our highway technician assistant ones. That's our highest job with our highest turnover. So I'm very optimistic that that's going to go well. And I hope to see numbers from that in January. And if it does go well, which again, I hope it will, we're going to open that up to all 12 districts. And
Okay. Mr. Chairman, questions or comments on that section?
Well, we'll certainly have a few on that. I think that's one of the things that we talked about this last budget cycle, Chairman Upchurch and myself, is moving those employees to 40-hour work week, which I think is two reasons. One, we need to get the work out the door. And two, we hear, especially with our engineers, that we were not competitive with the outside world. Well, we'll never be competitive if we're paying an engineer for 37 and a half hours a week. And in the outside world, it's probably 45 plus. They're probably working well over 40 hours a week. So it's really not comparing apples to apples. So I just think that would be important. And we could probably take some of these funded positions and maybe come up with we'll have to talk about how we're going to pay for that 14 million or 12 million that we'll owe. But I do think that's, and hopefully we have some agreement from the cabinet that's important to try to do that. Vehicle enforcement, are most of those, what's the vacancy there? What are those actually those POP certified folks that are out on the road, or?
no, vehicle enforcement isn't with transportation any longer.
Okay, vehicle regulation.
Yes.
Then okay, what does that pertain?
That's the driver's licensing offices, motor carriers, motor vehicle licensing, those folks.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification on that. Any other questions from? Okay, Mr. Chairman has a question. Chairman Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your presentation. Maybe a question in here, maybe just some comments while I've got the Director of Human Resources here. Some people may not want to hear what I've got to say, but it's all right. I'm used to it. Get a lot of calls from your folks. Single most cabinet that I hear from employees from. One of the things that I've hear a lot about, and I explain to them that it's necessary, be patient, that you're all working on it, but is over the past several years where people have been brought in more at the midpoint level, and some of them's been there a while and they're making as much as a new hire as somebody that's been there for a while. And I keep explaining to them it takes time, but you're all working getting this balanced. We've kind of got out of balance and it's taken some time, but I get a lot of people that call about that. So just, I guess, wanted to make you all aware that people are griping to me, and I'm sure others have heard from constituents about that type of situation. That's
Right.
comment.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, Mr. Chairman. I know you and I have had several conversations. You call me when you get comments, and I appreciate that. We
Yes, sir.
appreciate that. I'll let Tracy speak to it. When I speak with James Ballinger, of course, and most of our out of 4,400 employees in the cabinet, maybe it's up to 4,600 today. Tracy knows exactly those numbers. In any event, roughly 3,400 are Department of Highways, and so, and that's where we will. That's where these cases or these situations have occurred, and what we have worked toward is improving the overall system, as you've said, and will there be case by case conditions? The answer to that, from my point of view, is yes. And will we work to address them? And the answer is yes there as well. Now, Tracy, you amplify on what I've just said.
Yes, we get those calls as well. I talk to employees myself, and as well as my staff. I will say the job review project has helped. It did increase a lot of salaries, so that did help. We do adjust salaries as often as we can with the appointments up to midpoint, because we can adjust people's salaries that are current employees. When we do talk to people that are upset, we explain to them the process, how it goes, and we explain to them when they move up in the process via reclass, or if they do get promoted, that we will review their personnel action at that time, and we will do everything we can to rectify their salary at their next personnel action. So we empathize with them at that point in time. We may not be able to do something for them today, but we understand, and we will do all we can as soon as we can to help them.
Thank you. And I knew that, but I wanted to get that on record because I've been telling them that. I try to explain it to them, and it's going to take time to play catch up because of the situation over the past several years outside of any of our control. But we're trying to remedy that problem. So thank you.
It's inversion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I will say just as a footnote, that when I had another job in the public sector, mayor of Lexington, we had inversion issues. And even in the private sector, there are often inversion issues. And the best, from at least my point of view on it, is that the best thing we can do is to be attentive to it. The good news is that there were a lot of raises and across the board, and entry-level opportunities where we needed to be competitive were addressed. So with that, not unexpectedly, sometimes comes some awkward conditions that we need to work on, and we try to address that on a case-by-case basis. So the feedback that you all sometimes get is valuable and important and relevant to us.
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir.
And I get, we've had a lot of conversations about that, but I do applaud the cabinet for working on that entry level and getting that pay rate up, which has caused us some other problems. But that's a good thing. It's like I said, there has been a lot of raises, and I think hiring, recruiting, and retaining employees has become not as I guess a burden as it once was.
It's relieved to some extent, yes.
Yeah.
Some improved,
Okay.
right.
Okay, that's Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Representative Bolin.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, quick question. On region, over here to your right, far right. Yeah, how are you doing? Good. On regional driver's license offices, a huge complaint that I get, that I hear, is kind of the lack of communication between the regional offices and people that are trying to get their driver's license processed. Do they answer their telephones locally, these local offices, or is all communication routed to Frankfurt to take care of whatever issue they might have?
Well, good question. I will say that I don't know exactly that if I'm correct on it, but my inclination is to believe that we are responding locally.
Okay.
But I'll confirm that for sure. I don't think it's routed through.
It's
central
my understanding
office.
that there is no, like for a local telephone, there is no local number for folks to call. So a lot of them have to go visit in person, and a lot of them, as you know, they might live an hour away, so they're having to, drive an hour to get the question answered. Then they got to go back home, gather things, and all that. And then, from my understanding from folks that have reached out to me, that they get directed to Frankfurt, and that they'll do what kind of the Frankfurt office says, and they'll bring whatever. But then locally, there's another issue with what they need to bring, or the documents, or whatever. And I do think it could be cut out if they could, if they could speak directly with the folks that are going to be processing that data, and that just might be something worth looking into.
Absolutely. I would, we're often, we often are surprised by something, or can be new information for us. I'll put it that way.
Understood.
We are, and I'm reminded myself when I have a sense of urgency about fixing some things, I'm reminding myself that, we're a couple of years into this,
Right.
into this standing up these offices.
Mm-hmm.
And so to some extent, we want to be patient while we also want to be persistent.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, feedback from you all is valuable and important and relevant to us.
Very
And
good.
We'll confirm
Thank you.
that particular situation.
Yep.
Because that response time and where we are
I just-
public facing.
Yeah, I think
and
it just adds another
customer-facing.
barrier in
Yeah,
between
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and I think it could help out. I think it could go a really long way. So
Yeah.
thank you for your consideration.
We might have an answer before the end of this session for that. I know Kenny's probably already looking into it. Yeah.
One other question on talking about the hiring of the temporary staff that you hire. Are any of those temporary staff considered, or are they employed later on at full time, or are they always just temporary?
They can apply to any of the vacant registers. They would go through the same hiring process to be considered for anybody off of the street. So it's up to them to apply to the vacancy.
So if you have an opening and somebody applies for that position, can you hire them as a temporary until they're approved through personnel? Is that all the same process?
It's the same process. So if a temporary employee applied to a vacancy that we had in the regional office that they're working for currently as a temporary employee, they could still keep working as the temporary employee up until we completed the process for the merit hire, even if they were the recommended candidate for the merit hire.
I guess my question, or is it can you get someone on the job quicker as a temporary while they're being processed as full time, or is that possible?
At times, yes.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further questions.
Representative Bowling. Yeah.
Okay, McPherson, Representative McPherson.
Oh,
has
yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, since we've dove into the licensing, probably the hardest thing, the worst I get blistered on anything is what we're doing in Bowling Green with that licensing process. And I talked to Miss Jackson yesterday. She's super, super, super good to work with. She works all the time, very hard. I pretty much have her on speed dial.
She's just texting me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, but again, Mr. Secretary, being from Glasgow, the area, Bowling Green, Allen County, 22nd District, all that area is the most growing part of the state right now. I think our figures are probably, even if we think we're close to the population, we're probably 3 to 6 months behind where it really is. That area is just overwhelmed with, and I get calls every week of people that just say, I'll fund anybody that'll run against this to make this change. Please, please, please consider putting a office in Barron County. It will cut off so much of the area. It would cut off, Hart County, Metcalfe, Monroe, even part of Allen County that would go to Barron County. I know it's not my district, but please, 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 because the Warren County area is so big and growing so much that area is having such a hard time keeping up with. And I get good reports of people that's happy, and then I get reports of just people that are set down there forever and have a hard time getting the licensing process to go through because of the volume that they're trying to work through there.
We are looking into Barron County very, very intentionally.
I will report to you that in this past budget and through legislation, Barron County is part of the pilot project. They're currently twice a month. They're doing driver's testing in Barron County, which is a huge asset, and I think that Kentucky State Police for working with us on that, and hopefully that pilot project will be something that we can expand in this next budget. Right.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how you're looking on your time.
We're good.
You're good? Okay, all right. All right, then we can move on to the Riverlink is next with Amanda Spencer. And then we'll go into mega projects.
Okay. All right, please identify yourself for the record and please proceed.
Good morning, Amanda Spencer, Assistant State Highway Engineer. And I appreciate the opportunity this morning to update you on the Louisville Bridges, operating cost, debt service, and toll rates. The Bridges project was one of the largest undertakings in the nation, and it continues to be a successful bi-state effort with Indiana. Kentucky took the lead on financing, designing, and constructing the downtown crossing, while NDOT and the IFA took the lead on financing, designing, and constructing the East End crossing. The project nearly doubled Cross River capacity in downtown Louisville, untangled Spaghetti Junction, and completed that important new connection on the East End. The $2.3 billion project was possible because of tolling, with the motorists who benefit from the bridges contributing to the cost of construction and ongoing maintenance. Both states continue to meet their financial obligations, and the tolling operation, branded as Riverlink, is governed by the Kentucky-Indiana Joint Board and the Kentucky-Indiana Tolling Body. Toll rates are based on vehicle classification, and that's determined by height and number of axles. A motorist today in a passenger car is paying $261 if they have a prepaid account and a transponder. The toll rate increases, all the toll rates increase annually on July 1st by either 2.5% or CPI, whichever is higher. And that policy governing toll rate increases was established by the Kentucky-Indiana Tolling Body in 2013. You can see the toll rate increases here over the last 5 years, with the most recent increase of 3.4% that became effective on July 1st, and that's in line with CPI. The most efficient and cost-effective way for drivers to use the bridges is with that prepaid account and transponder. They'll save more than $2 per crossing, and commuters who travel more than 40 times, cross more than 40 times in a month, they'll save even more with the frequent user discount. Kentucky and Indiana share project revenues equally. Kentucky's share of tolls and fees was $70.9 million in fiscal year 23 and $75.7 million in fiscal year 24. The revenue can only be used for debt service, operations, and maintenance. We made debt service payments totaling $32.5 million in fiscal year 23 and $33.5 million in fiscal year 24. The remaining debt service schedule totals $1.4 billion through 2053. And our operating costs include the back office, where transactions are processed, the customer service operation, the roadside, which captures those transponders and plates, revenue control manager, all those that you see here. I did fail to include here our financial advisor, PFM, our auditor, Crow, U.S. Bank, the bank account that we share with Indiana, our trustee, the Bank of New York, and I believe those, along with the ones that you see here, capture the partners helping us to operate the toll system day to day. Portions of these, the toll operations portion of these costs, those are shared 50-50 with Indiana. We also use the toll revenue for roadway maintenance. That includes the areas you see here in green, as well as the Kentucky portion of the East End crossing, which includes the tunnel. And KYTC recently executed a performance-based tunnel maintenance contract with Weber to take care of the tunnel. Our total operating expenses, which includes those items I went over, including maintenance, was $13.8 million in fiscal year 23 and $14.4 million in fiscal year 24. Again, toll revenue can only be used for debt service, operations, and maintenance. In fiscal year 23, revenue exceeded expenses by $24.6 million. In fiscal year 24, revenue exceeded expenses by $27.8 million. That concludes my presentation, but I would be more than happy to take any questions.
On the credit balance, or the $27 million out of what was you show there for the balance. Are we paying forward any on the debt? Or are we using all that for maintenance and upkeep?
That is governed by the trust. The flow of funds is governed by the trust indenture. There are cases, if the revenue gets high enough in certain reserve accounts, where an extra payment would be made. I believe that has happened one time. I could get you some information on how that works. But in general, the money comes to us from U.S. Bank 50-50. We get our 50%. It goes into the Bank of New York, the trustee. It stays there and funds those various reserve accounts in line with the trust indenture. And it is available to us, for example, for future major infrastructure improvements.
I just, I guess there were talks at one time that we would pay this off, retire these bonds earlier than anticipated. And so the only way we could do that is if we did make extra payments. So that's why the question.
That is governed entirely by the trust indenture, our ability to do so, and I'd be happy to get more information on what that would look like and what revenues would have to look like over time in order for those additional payments to be a possibility.
Well, I guess my question would be, are we on track to pay it off early, and are we making additional payments? Because I think that was some talk several years ago that we were on track to pay it off early.
I'll have to look into that and get back to you. I'll get you that information.
Yeah, we welcome Chairman McDaniel to the committee, and he has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you basically covered everything with what you, Mr. Secretary, with what you just said. But yeah, I would also be interested in those trust indenture agreements, and then historically, when we have had revenues in excess of expenses, kind of just where that landed. So, and just when you have a minute, over the next month or so, would be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One comment I want to make, and I know the 2nd Street Bridge is still free. We had this little meeting in Louisville, NCSL, and I noticed observation that day, how far the traffic backs up on 2nd Street to get across the free bridge, avoiding the tolls. I was just kind of amazed the number of people, the length of time they had to wait to get across that free bridge and the congestion that it caused in downtown Louisville. I've never heard a complaint about that, but I did witness that firsthand, and I thought maybe one day maybe there was an accident, maybe a truck hanging over the edge of the bridge or something. But it was the same way that even on the second day I noticed it. I don't know if that's something that you all monitor.
Of course, we keep an eye on traffic every day, but one thing I would mention is that there was an environmental commitment as part of the project that 2nd Street would remain free.
And is there ever any consideration to freeze the toll of the increase from time to time? I know we're going up at a fairly steady pace, and and we do have excess funds every year. So I didn't know if that's something that's ever considered.
Kentucky, and Secretary may want to take this one, I would just say Kentucky has made its position clear that we want to keep the tolls as low as possible. We've done analysis. We stand ready to meet with Indiana and try to get that work done. Anything you want to add to that, Secretary?
No, I don't. Yeah, the governor has been real clear on his position on it, and what Amanda just expressed. We, of course, have an agreement and a working relationship with Indiana, so it does require both states to agree to adjustments. Indiana's model, of course, is different than ours. We won't drill into that entirely, but they've got the P3 model where we did ours on a design-build basis, and so it does present different challenges. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Certainly.
Okay.
It's my understanding that we asked Indiana back when it was going to go up 8% to maybe freeze that, and the answer was no.
The governor made a very special effort on that one. Yes.
Okay. Well, seeing no further questions, I guess that answers our questions about the bridge. Thank you so much for your report.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right, ready to talk about mega projects?
We are.
All right, all right. I'll do my best to.
Maybe can you tell us what the toll rate is going to be on the new Ben Spence Bridge? You can give us an update on that.
Yeah, Senator McDaniel said he'd answer that one right.
Okay, Senator McDaniel, what's that rate going to be?
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the largest single grant in the history of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and I would venture to say the largest one in history, has helped to answer that question. The $1.6 billion grant through the bipartisan infrastructure law, through that I will talk about in just a second. But let me put in context before I talk about these three mega projects that we have on our plate today. 4,400 employees in the cabinet work together to deliver hundreds of road and bridge construction projects. More than 1,700 projects are in the plan today at various stages of development, and billions of dollars of improvements. Kentucky ranks in the top 10 largest bridge and pavement systems in the country, and we routinely rank at the top in the country for overall performance and cost effectiveness. So we want to say that in the context of saying none of this would be possible without the great team at the cabinet and the partnerships that we enjoy with you all, with the legislature. And I want to just punctuate that. We genuinely appreciate the relationships that the cabinet has on an operational level at every level. It's not just with you here in a legislative meeting like this, but it's through our districts where all of you often engage, and our chief district engineers and their employees. So we just want to thank you for that. Now, what we're talking about today are these larger construction projects, and several of them stand out. Our three mega projects, the Brent Spence Bridge Corridor project in northern Kentucky, the Mountain Parkway expansion, and the I-69 Ohio River crossing that includes Kentucky's key investments between Kentucky and Indiana. So we've got projects with Ohio, essentially a joint venture with Ohio on the Brent Spence corridor. We've got essentially a joint venture with Indiana on the I-69, and the Mountain Parkway is our own. Okay, so let's jump in the Wayback Machine a little bit, at least, not too far back, but just under 2 years ago, Governor Beshear and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine announced the award of federal funding on the Brent Spence corridor, more than $1.6 billion, and that gave us the green light to move toward design and construction of this project. So what is that? What is this project? It's a capacity-adding safety improvement project that will widen I-71 and 75 from Dixie Highway in Kentucky to the Izard Charles Boulevard in Ohio for almost 8 miles total improvement. The Brent Spence carries over $1 billion in freight daily, or 3% of the nation's gross domestic product across that bridge. The project contemplates building a new companion bridge next to the existing Brent Spence Bridge, along with the 8-mile corridor. So the existing Brent Spence will serve local traffic going to and from the Covington, Cincinnati area, while the new companion bridge will carry I-71 and I-75 traffic bypassing this metro area. Okay, so what milestones have we hit in 2024? Well, first, the finding of no significant impact, the FONSI, the environmental clearance. We've also done a significant amount of value engineering associated with the design and engineering phase of the project. All the bridges, not just the crossing over the Ohio, but all the bridges on the 8-mile corridor are the most significant parts of the project. And Kentucky is working with the joint venture contractor to help reduce the overall square footage of the bridges in Kentucky from about 1 million square feet to just north of 600,000 square feet. That's the footprint of the bridges. We are soon to achieve a 30% design completion. Now, what that does is it helps us get a better cost estimate from the contractors. The majority of the property acquisition has also been completed, and all permit applications will be submitted to the Kentucky Division of Water, Army Corps of Engineers, because it's an over water crossing, of course, and the U.S. Coast Guard because it's over water crossing by November. We expect more pricing by the end of November from the contractors. The contractors are working with the states on the schedule, including early work packages and opportunities that will allow us to determine the probable cost by the end of this year. Now, I'm like a little bit like Senator McDaniel, Senator Branscombe, who are in the construction industry. This is a big project, and that means that it's complex, and that means that there are really good people working on it in project management roles in several areas. We have some of the best. Secretary Hancock will confirm, he was on the Louisville bridges. He was the secretary when those bridges were built. So he's very involved in this project. And a guy named Gary Valentine, some of you all may know Gary. He may have, I can't remember when Gary appeared before these committees, but Gary was the project manager along with Secretary Hancock. They were very active on the Louisville bridges. So Gary is our mega projects senior project manager. Amanda's involved. We have a great team involved, but it's hands-on all the time. Not just this project, but I'm going to move into not just the Brent Spence, but also the Mountain Parkway and I-69. So 2025 will be a big year as we moved forward on the Brent Spence toward construction. Now, Mountain Parkway, big project, transformational, almost $1 billion investment to modernize the highway, improve safety, and provide and maintain an important economic conduit into the mountains that will improve quality of life for all Kentuckians. Construction is coming soon. Representative Blanton, on the McGoffin-Floyd segment, we already have in place a design-build contract. It's the last piece of the project to get underway to expand the parkway to 4 lanes between Campton and Prestonburg. Milestone, big milestone. Now, 2 sections are already underway. Wolfe County segment and the McGoffin County West segment. Wolfe section, the segment, broke ground in August of 2022. It was made possible by a $55 million infra grant, a federal grant. McGoffin West, construction began in the fall of 2019, 4.6 miles of new roadway. Almost 6 million cubic yards of excavation. That's a lot. A new interchange at Cow Creek. The goal is to get all 4 lanes of the parkway open to traffic this fall for the McGoffin West section. I'm glad to see Chairman Blanton nodding his head. He's in agreement with this. The last section, which is now under development, is the McGoffin-Floyd segment. And we're utilizing a progressive design build model for this project. It will extend the project 13 miles from US 460 in Salyersville to Floyd County. Cross-county new alignment. 4-lane controlled access. All right, what does that look like? Well, it creates a faster and safer route, a lower impact to property, to homes and businesses. Where are we? Well, the environmental document was signed by Federal Highways on May 28th of this year. KYTC has applied for multimodal project discretionary grant. It's shorthand MPDG grant. We applied in May with a request for $116 million, waiting on results. Now, if you all recall that the legislature was very helpful in identifying $300 million in general fund that would be available, conditioned on the receipt of the federal grants. So it's been a big help in advocating for these grants because it shows that we've got skin in the game. Big deal. So we're advocating vigorously and we're hopeful. Not over till it's over. There's a lot of competition for these grants, but you've been very helpful. And we are relentless in our advocacy. There's a lot of detail about where we are here. I don't think I won't wear you out with all of this. We are making progress. Our right-of-way process is well underway in McGoffin, not officially begun yet in Floyd. We've got a total of 68 parcels, which includes 17 homes in McGoffin. Now, we're always sensitive about this process, and we're always careful about this process. We're always respectful about this process. And at the same time, we know that a project of this significance is not painless. It sometimes does require us to take on challenges that are sometimes difficult, and the right-of-way process can include that. In Floyd County, there are a total of 52 parcels that are part of the right-of-way process. So ultimately, Mountain Parkway expansion is an investment in the communities of Eastern Kentucky with a safer, more accessible highway. Mountain Parkway serves as Eastern Kentucky's connection to the rest of the state. And building better roads can lead to increased tourism dollars, increased economic vitality for all of Eastern Kentucky. It allows both our fellow Kentuckians and those from beyond to experience all of Eastern Kentucky. Now, finally, the I-69, the I-69 crossing between Evansville and Henderson includes 3 sections of I-69 improvements in Indiana, Kentucky, and a new Ohio River bridge between Henderson and Evansville. I-69's been a national priority for decades. And when complete, the new interstate route will connect Canada to Mexico. I can say parenthetically that for those of you who are members of the Western Kentucky delegation, and especially or your colleagues who may not be here today, but I don't think I've ever seen a community and communities more engaged and more passionate about a project, perhaps with the exception of Northern Kentucky and the Brent Spence and the Mountain Parkway. So everybody is engaged with this project if you're living in Western Kentucky. It will construct more than 11 miles. This project will construct more than 11 miles of new interstate, a new reliable river crossing equipped to handle interstate travel, and new and improved interchanges. We all know that it's really essential for connectivity, for safety, and economic competitiveness in Henderson. and Evansville and throughout the region and both states. We are now actively constructing Section 1, which is south of the Ohio River. It's about a $160 million project. It's been engaged on a design-build basis as well. Indiana is actively constructing and building Section 3, which is north of the river. So we bring it all together with the bridge. We are 75% complete on Section 1, the Kentucky approach. It will extend I-69 in Kentucky by 6 miles from where it currently ends at its intersection with the Henderson bypass to the Ohio River. Now, Section 2 is the connection point. That's the 4-lane Ohio River Bridge. That's scheduled to begin in 2027 and be completed in 2031. There is some optimism, however, that if we're awarded a federal discretionary grant and we're able to achieve the support that the legislature and the governor have recommended, the two states may be able to accelerate this timeline and begin construction in 2026. And of course, that's what folks in the region are really excited about, is that potential.
Mr. Chairman, while you're
Yes, sir.
contemplating
I'm just about there.
well, Representative Blanton has a question. I know if he's like me, if you don't answer it, ask it, he'll forget what it was. I do that, so that's why I have to interrupt people from time
No, that's
to time.
fine. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question, more of just a add to on the Mountain Parkway, if I may, so that committee members will understand. You mentioned, and it has been a delicate situation dealing with landowners, that the cabinet has did a fantastic job of mitigating a couple particular instances with some folks. It's unfortunate, but you heard the totals: 17 in McGoffin, 50 some in Floyd County, for 60 some.
68 in McGoffin, but that's 17 homes.
17 homes,
17
right?
homes.
But I'm talking about homes in general.
Right,
here.
homes and 8
And-
in Floyd.
And
right.
so there was an alternative route, so people understands, and that was along the 114 corridor. And what that would look like would have been a US 23, where we would not have had a limited access highway. It would have been 55 mile, wouldn't have been a modern limited access, but also we were looking at upwards of 150 residents rather than what we're looking at now. And I even had the local realtors coming to me and saying, we just can't accommodate these people. We don't have places to move these. So that was another factor in going into that. Also, I would point out that, and working with, I've been working over the last year now with Congressman Rogers, and he also has some money, if it stays in there, when it gets to the final budget process, for some additional funds to help us on that project. It's still there. I've been in communication while we're sitting here with his chief of staff. It's still there thus far. Fingers crossed that it makes it through the process. So that will help. Also, in pointing out on these big projects, that I've learned through this is it used to be like a 20% match, and that was all you had to do. Well, these bids on these grants are becoming very competitive. And the fact is, other states are starting to put up more than 20%, which means when they're doing that, they're getting these grants before we are. So we've had to increase the amount we're willing to put up in order to make us competitive. So when people ask, why are you putting up more than the 20%? Well, that's why. We have to put it up if we want to have a shot at getting these grants. So I just wanted to fill in that information on the Parkway status.
Thank you. And I think we're at 55% was our match on this one. That was,
Yep.
that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Well, and I want to express again the appreciation for the recognition that you all have for these dynamics. It really makes a difference. I've only walked in these shoes and these moccasins for a few years, but I've learned that when you've got the kind of cooperation and understanding of these things by members of the legislature in the state, that it makes a big difference with the federal authorities. It makes a big difference, and so we really appreciate that.
Thank you. Representative Bray has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'd alluded to kind of earlier the money that we had set aside for the match on these grants. I was under the impression, I guess it was, we would know pretty quick the results of the grant application. Do you all have a timeline on when we might know whether we've been accepted or who those grants are going to?
Whenever there is a specific date, well, I'll put it, I don't think we've gotten any very specific date. There are indicators that it's not too far off, indications that it's not too far off. So, and we're hopeful that it's not too far off. So we should know something, in my view, relatively soon.
Okay, thank you all.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Chairman Blanton.
No,
Oh.
you go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can at ease for a second there, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary.
Okay.
Okay. I've heard rumors, and I don't think that this has ever been discussed or nothing official, that there's rumors floating around by some that there will be no tolls on the I-69 bridge, but that's never been determined, and that conversation is, to my understanding, is still open to toll the I-69 bridge. Correct.
Our funding model, I'll defer to Mike Hancock on that. I know that the governor has indicated that he would very much like to see the same condition, that we not be required to toll if we can avoid that.
Well, and he and yourself and some of us sitting here work on the road plan, and we know those dollars are awfully tight.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
there was never a commitment not to do it. In fact, the conversation was,
that's
and
right.
understanding always
Yes.
was that bridge would be towed. So I just caution folks not to put the cart before the horse. And I know that another elected official made a comment not too long ago that it would not have tolls. So I just want to caution folks that that decision, I don't think, has officially been made, and we still need to hold those options open.
Yes, sir.
My next question would be, and you know, we're getting ready to sign a design build on this last section. What do we do if we don't, Mountain Parkway, if we already signed the design build contract?
Well, we have a contract that we're operating from today, which gives us the opportunity to begin engineering, but a contract like this is always dependent on the funding.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mr. Secretary, is that the end of our
Yes, sir.
conversation?
It is.
Well, thank you all
good
for
you,
being here
thank you.
today, and thank you for the good information. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for always being available.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
He's getting to be an old head, now he's got two under his belt.
I play the new part for a while.
You got to dance on that.